Today on Dirt Road Cred, we have the absolute privilege of checking out this 1993 Jeep YJ Splash Edition time capsule. Now, this Jeep behind me is so important in a few different ways. The first one is that this is a barn find, garage kept, one owner vehicle with less than 55,000 miles. And the second is just how important this Jeep might be to the current generation of Jeep and why it maybe wasn't so hot when it was first released back in the 90s. So life sometimes always seems to come full circle. About 4 months ago, I was driving my Bikini Rubicon 392 down Main Street in our small little town when I just so happened to pass this exact Jeep. It almost made my heart stop when I saw it drive by because I saw this was an original 93 YJ Splash Edition in almost the same bikini pearl clear coat, and it looked absolutely cherry. Honestly, there was a big regret in my mind for not whipping around the Jeep following them and saying, "How much do you want for that?" Because I will take it right now, no questions asked. 4 months later, we're actually at the owner's house. He lives locally and it's a friend of Ryan's. So we get to see it in person and check out everything that this Jeep has to offer. It's a really cool story because this Jeep was actually purchased locally right here in Mount Joy, Pennsylvania, lived for the majority of its life, and then this is the second owner. So they're the second owner. They bought it off the original owner. And in the glove box, they've even got the 1993 service manual and the warranty information. And it showed a delivery date, Ryan, you might be able to pull it up, but I believe it was like August of 1993. So this is 32 years old this month. To see a Jeep like this 32 years old is absolutely incredible. So first and foremost, with the Splash Edition, the biggest thing that you got with this Jeep was, of course, the graphics package. This was exactly the graphic style I was looking to do on my 392. You've got that retro Solo Cup, that 90s straight, Saved by the Bell, Power Rangers, the whole 90s deal going on with that. And then the next thing is you would have got paint to match fender flares and the nice side step. One thing that was changed on this Jeep is they did factory color match the hardtop. This would, I believe, have been white, which I don't know, Ryan, I think white would have looked a lot better. It really would have made this thing stand out. And the Splash Edition was only made available in the bikini color, red, white, and black. Now, on some of those models, they actually changed the splash coloring as well. So I know on the reds, there was more purples in there. And then I know in the white one, it was actually changed. I think it had some red in it, but they actually changed the decals depending on the color. What's neat about this one is seeing it with less than 55,000 miles and being garage kept, the typical YJ rust points of right here on the fender, right here on the windshield frame, underneath on the frame, in the back corners, on the leaf spring hangers, it's non-existent. So it's legitimately like looking at this Jeep if it were driven for a few years in the 90s and then seeing it then. There have been some upgrades and modifications made in the 90s, including the ever so popular chrome tube bumpers in the front. There's a chrome tube bumper with integrated hitch in the back, and then some sort of billet taillight markers. So there was a couple things done to it, but it was a Jeep and it was in the 90s. So that, if you looked at a 90s catalog, Ryan, that's primarily what you saw in here. Now, popping the hood on this 93 YJ, this is where the magic really starts. And as we go inside, I will show you just how optioned up this thing is, because it's pretty insane to look at. We can just absolutely see how clean this Jeep is underneath the hood. This is a 93, so it would have came with a 4.0 liter inline 6 engine, which is basically a bulletproof engine. But just look at how clean the intake manifold is. All the nuts, bolts, everything from the firewall, the inner fenders, Ryan, these always rust here. Look at this. There's not like a speck of rust here. Original jack under the hood, all of the warnings and different things on the stickers, these primarily burned off too. So the sequence model for the engines here, just a complete time capsule. Now, it doesn't come with its own little hiccups, but looking underneath the engine bay of this Jeep, you can clearly tell it was garage kept and very well maintained. Going from this to see everything on here, it says, hey, caution, oil filter, here's the thread, here's the part number. And in the manual inside, it's like, here's how to change the timing, here's how to replace spark plugs. And in the current manuals, it's like, do not eat the steering wheel. Like back in the 90s, people still worked on their vehicles. Nowadays, it's like, do not look directly into sun, use visor. It's insane how much we've changed as a culture compared to what these vehicles were. But the inside of this, I think, is what's so special, because this was a very, very well-optioned Jeep back in its time. This was not a Jeep per se for the 90s. this would have been a very special unit. And I would say the buyer would be more unique, as back in the 90s, Jeeps were seen as a very, very utility vehicle. So this would have been something like, almost like a premium Sahara trim rolling around. This one probably wouldn't have been a woods beater, gone out in the woods and really been used hard. This would have been a more on-road premium trim and probably led to those future generations of more of an on-road Jeep. But I think what's so important is when we pop that driver's side door, because I want to show you the features inside this thing. So guys, as we pop the interior of this YJ, you can see it's just as much of a time capsule inside the Jeep as it is on the outside. We're looking at just under, what do we got on this thing? 52,500 miles. As you look around the inside of this Jeep, you can see just how well optioned it was. If you look around, we've got still the cloth seats, so it wasn't the upgraded, but we do have the leather in the inseam with the Jeep lettering. Center console on here, and then a massive upgrade, and something that would have had to either be factory ordered or special ordered, air conditioning. That was not common at all in the YJ. So to see a factory AC unit with the nice stereo in here, this was a really heavy duty setup, but it just doesn't stop there. Back in 93, the standard option would have been an AX5 or an AX15 manual transmission, and in this Jeep, we've got the automatic transmission. Secondary option on this. Not only do we have the automatic transmission, but we've also got the tilt column. So the column is actually tilting. I've never actually owned a YJ with a tilt column, so to see one functioning with the automatic transmission is very neat. And then as we took this, we just backed it out of the driveway here, all of the original gauges still work. Now this one does not have the clock. Sometimes they would have the clock on here. Some of mine actually had a clock on there. But this one has all the gauges. They're still working, which is extremely rare. And then the back seat has been torn out, not ripped out, but just pulled out because they do carry around their pups in here. But looking around this thing, it's almost 100% original. I do see some different roll cage padding here. I see a different sound bar on this than would have been factory. This is a Jensen unit, so this would have been upgraded probably in the later 90s, early 2000s. But overall, when you look at this thing, just absolutely incredible inside to see a time capsule like this. And then, I mean, just popping even the floorboards, there's like there's not even rust underneath this thing. The original carpet on here, it's just a solid, beautiful Jeep on the inside. It's just crazy how simple these Jeeps are compared to what we've got sitting in our garage and in our shop. I used to have these and just leave a bikini top on all summer, let it rain, let it wash out. I didn't even have carpet. It didn't matter. You could get them wet and the Jeeps just didn't care. But super, super cool to see a Survivor like this internally and just kind of how far we've gotten from this. I would say, I know when the argument has been made from the original Jeeps with a flat dash, they kind of started to go away from that. The YJ still gave a flat all the way across. It had this bigger kind of top bar. And then the TJ and the early JKs, they really went away from that flat dash. They started with this giant center console. And I would argue the JL and JT, they kind of went back to that more flat area. They wanted to get back to the roots, but this is closer to the roots and why they went just that full flat all the way across. But look at how tiny the glove box is, Ryan. Even in here too, Jeep tire inflation, disengaged front axle drive when operating on dry, hard surfaced roads, like just the warnings in here. It shows how to flat tow behind a Gladiator. There's literally a picture of this Jeep being flat towed behind a Gladiator. And the instructions are in there. So just really, really neat. So check this out. I'm curious if they still work, Ryan. I'm not going to do them. These are the tilt windows, so you could actually angle those and get air to come in.
Ah, okay.
But sometimes, all right, let's do cool. Oh, let's see if it works. I think just be careful with, because this one was already cool. Okay, yeah, so let's turn it all the way to cool. I've never had a YJ with air conditioning. Let's see if it's actually working. You know how much luxury this would have been in the 90s?
Yeah.
Wow. It's just smooth. It's quiet. They said they just had an alignment done too at the local shop as well. All the gauges are working, oil pressure, battery, all the gauges working. That would be your four-wheel drive engagement. So if you put this in four-wheel drive, that would light up top and down below. These were notorious because they have vacuum actuated front axle shafts, so it would actually do a disconnect, and they would always go bad and give you errors there. I fixed a couple of them, or you could just delete them. Tilt column, get it dialed in exactly where you want. That's crazy. Look at this beautiful just drive out here. This is
what it's made for.
Take the top and doors off though, of course, but then you lose the splash decal, so I'd still take the top and doors off of this
top
thing.
at least.
Yeah. I don't know if the splash, if they did half doors as well, because this would have been an option then too. They might have just done full doors with this, but that's crazy. It's so like butter smooth too for a 32-year-old vehicle. So guys, now that we've walked around this absolutely beautiful YJ, I think it's kind of time we talk about like what we said in the beginning of this video, why this vehicle might not have been the most popular in the mid-90s. You guys got to remember, in the mid-90s, Jeep Wranglers were really viewed as more of a fun toy, as more of a woods beater, as more of a mudding off-road vehicle that wasn't really seen as a daily driver. In the YJ days, the reason they went with the square headlights was not only because everything was square in the late 80s and early 90s, but also it was to remove themselves from the CJ7 articles about rolling over, tipping over, and just not being as safe of a vehicle for daily driving. The YJ is shorter, it is wider, and it is more stable than the CJ7, and they went away from that more rugged, military, off-road style in a pretty drastic shift. In the mid-90s, this probably would have sat on the dealership lot for a little bit. It was a very specific buyer who was looking for this vehicle, and I would imagine that rolling around in this, you'd probably get the same comments like you do today. That's not a real Jeep. That thing doesn't go off-road. That's not this, that's not that. But I just think the nostalgia of this and the pure detailing in this and the styling, I can imagine the artists in the room drawing up these decals and installing them probably at the Mopar Custom Shop back then in '93. And I would say that the reason it's so important now is because everyone is so nostalgic about that time period, and we can see that in our modern culture. We can see that in pop culture with shows like Stranger Things. But this is what people are looking for. And we were just speaking with the owner, and I actually said, you know, back when this was new, someone that was born in the 70s, probably the early 70s to mid 70s, would have been driving by these on lots when they were 16 to age 21. This was a very well optioned Jeep, so probably a little bit out of their price range for a high school or early college or early workforce individual. But now those people are in their 50s and 60s and can afford something like this, and to find one in mint condition is really what people are looking for. I would say the 60s generation's vehicles are kind of starting to get diminished and put out of place a little bit, and this is what's hot. The 90s and 80s culture, you can see it on soda cans now, you can see it on all these vintage decals, and I would say if Jeep would just follow that notion and maybe do something closer to the Rewind package that we just saw in Daytona Beach, these things would probably fly off the shelves. Do a bright color like the Purple Rain that's coming out, throw a Rewind or a Splash Edition decal on the side, give it a couple interior features that would be unique to that package, and throw it around the $995 mark and see what happens. Don't go to a $10,000 package or the High Tide, which included so much stuff. Give us something like this, throw some 90s nostalgia into it, and I think you would agree with me, Ryan, that would fly off the shelves. I mean, even buying the decals, and people would probably throw them onto their old JLs, but it's so important to see this because it reminds us of how far the Jeep has come, where this Jeep probably would have been an oddball back then, but right now is the star of the show. You couldn't drive this to a gas station or a car show without being stopped 10 times to take a look at it. This is what needs to be brought into the current Wrangler and Gladiator generation, this old school styling, and I don't know what else to say. But in reality, I'm thinking Ryan and I should pick this thing up and cut a check and just take this home, because it is such a beautiful vehicle and we'd love to keep it in that dirt road shed and keep it in there and drive it on these nice summer days. But I do think this holds a lot of value with the current generation JL, and I think that changing up some ideology and really incorporating this style of design work into that Jeep would be something beneficial to the brand, but I could be wrong. Let us know down below in the comments if you guys would personally pick up a Jeep that looked like this but modernized. I think it would be really badass to see in Jeep's lineup, but we'll have to see what they decide to come out with. It seems like they're starting to listen to the consumer base, but only time will tell. Until next time though, we're gonna take this thing maybe for a little 1 mile drive because I gotta see how it cruises with that AC on. But Ryan's behind the camera and I'm here talking to you, and we want you to get out there and earn yours.